We've talking about Bible study as one of the Big Ten, the fifth of the Big Ten. I want to backtrack just a bit, just an opinion. This is purely an opinion. I'm a fan of my guys having a hard Bible, meaning a Bible in their hands versus their iPhones. People nowadays have iPhone Bibles and they have everything on their iPhones, and that's not a right or wrong thing. It's just I've found one of the problems is you can't underline and take notes as easily in a iPhone as you can with a actual Bible. I use Bible Gateway as a study Bible for myself, but I want a hard copy of a study Bible because I want to teach people. Not everybody's going to have an iPhone. Not everybody's going to have that app, but everybody can have a Bible to read. And the translation I use is the NIV. The NIV is not necessarily better than other translations. I just found, again, my primary mission field was college campuses. So I was dealing with 18 to 22-year-olds, and I wanted to find the most clean translation in language that would be usable. A lot of people are big fans of the King James. It uses a bunch of words that kids don't use anymore, and so I didn't want to use that one because there's a lot of these and thous and stuff that isn't part of our normal language. I didn't want anything to get in the way of my mission field. If you go to a different mission field, maybe the King James is what you want to use. I'm sure there's study Bibles in the King James Version. The NIV to me then was accurate sufficiently. There's some translations that are a little more accurate. I think the American Standard is viewed as a little more precise and accurate, but it also had some phrasing and wordy terminology that was not as normative to my mission field. And I frankly didn't find an American Standard study Bible that had the kind of resources that the NIV study Bible had, not the text, because the accuracy of the American Standard may be slightly more accurate, but it wasn't that the NIV was inaccurate. It was sufficiently accurate, and it had a study Bible that was the simplest, that could be taught sustainably, could be reproduced, could be verbalized. I could walk through them with the Bible in our hands, and it was simple. And that's why I navigated on that. But what I would encourage you to, this is practical, not a Bible verse, is whatever Bible translation you're in, have your disciples be in the same translation. So if they're older believer, and I'm discipling them, and they grew up with the American Standard or whatever, during that season, I would want them to be in the NIV study Bible with me. Now, I don't mandate that they memorize scriptures within the NIV version because they'd probably have some verses they'd already memorized, and I want them to continue. So I don't want them learning memory verses in multiple translations because you get mixed up then. I don't want to memorize scripture in a different translation. And so when they're with me, when we're doing the business of discipleship, we're in the same translation. So when we're reading together, it's in the same translation in the meeting. Not what they do outside on their own. What they read on their own is up to them. But I'd like them to underline in the NIV. So what I do is I hand out NIV Bibles to my guys. I can buy them for $2 a piece or less. The Old and New Testament, super inexpensive. I bring it each week to the meeting to my guys. They use that then. They can take that home or they can keep it if they don't have an NIV. But I want us to read the same translation because it's hard when we're reading in a meeting. When we're going from different translation to different translation, it changes the flow of our group meeting. And in my case, I got a lot of guys in the room. If there's just me and another guy, it's simple. But when it's a lot of guys and some of them are young in the faith, they lose track of where we're at because they can't follow the different translations. So for practical reasons, my guys are in the NIV in our times when we meet. What they do on their own is up to them. I want them to underline in some Bible. And if they're new believers, I want them to underline in the NIV so we can reread what they've underlined or they can tell me what they've underlined and I can track it and follow it easier. That's just what I've learned for efficiency's sake. That's not a right or wrong, and that's not a more or less mature either. Again, my preference is that if they want to use their Bible as their iPhone, that's fine. I just find that I don't prefer that because, frankly, another thing I found is when people are on their phone, they get a message while we're in the meeting, they get teased by something, they want to check a score, they want to browse. It's a distraction. It's not an asset. It's a liability in terms of discipleship if that's their primary vehicle of the Bible. They can't grasp it, write in it, underline, take notes as easily, and they get distracted. And people then look around and say, he's on his phone. Well, he's on his Bible on his phone, but I can't tell. It's a no-win situation. That's not right or wrong. That's just my experience. So we use hard copy Bibles till the cows are home. That's what we're going to use in my family. What they do with their kids and their discipleship is up to them. I want to make sure I always tell them what I'm doing and why. So I want to give them the what, why, and how. They don't have to agree, but I want to give them the what and the why and the how in all my Bible reading and all my Bible memory and all my Bible study. The next of the Big Ten is what's called 5 questions. And again, I'm going to expound on all of these things thoroughly as a teaching. So each of these Big Ten will have their own teaching thing. I'm just trying to give you a feel for it so you have an impression of it before we move on. The 5 questions are all about evangelism and discipleship. They're a way that people are held accountable, myself included, because you as the leader are going to have to practice what you're preaching, and you go first and you go further. So the 5 questions are basically this. It's 5 questions within one of the Big Ten. So it's a tedious deal, and we don't do it every week at all, but we keep it on the radar regularly so I can both monitor their evangelism and discipleship efforts, and they can be held accountable to make sure they're thinking about it. The first question is, who are you discipling, and what are you doing to move them forward in the Big Ten? And we learned to add, what are you doing to move them forward in the Big Ten, is because what is normal is the disciples meet with the guy, and they pray a little bit, and they talk a little bit, and they read a little bit, and it stays in that spot, which is not a bad spot, but I want them to move forward in all of the Big Ten. And if I don't ask them what they did to move that guy forward in the Big Ten, then it'll turn into a Bible study. Not a learn how to use a Bible study. They'll end up talking about the Bible, which is not a bad thing, and they'll end up maybe studying the Bible at some level, but the goal in this is not to grow in knowledge. The goal is to develop tools in your toolbox that are reproducible, sustainable, reproducible, oral, simple, and relational. So that's the goal. And so what I found is if I don't ask them, otherwise when they come back with their homework, they'll say, I had a good meeting. We had a good meeting. What does that mean? I wanted something that was measurable in terms of them developing habits, not that it was a good meeting. Because they might have talked the whole time and it might have been really rich and vibrant, but it wasn't moving them forward in habits or in practice. It was moving them forward in relationship, that's good. It was moving them forward in knowledge, that's good. But I don't want them moving forward in knowledge and relationship as a goal. I want that to be the byproduct of the time. My goal is that they develop prayer, Bible reading, Bible memory, Bible song, Bible study. And the 5 questions was a way to them embed within their disciple making those habits and traits, besides the other ones, the other 6 through 10 that we're going to get to shortly. And so first question was, who are you discipling and what are you doing to move them forward in the Big Ten? Second was, who are your discipleship prospects? Who's out there you're praying about to invite into a discipleship relationship? And we've not talked about the circles diagram, but when we do, you would understand that it's within your circles that you tend to draw your disciples, your discipleship prospects, and also those people that you're praying for to come to Jesus. Third question, I'm sorry, I messed up in the questions in the order, my fault. First question is going to be, who are you praying for to come to Jesus, and what are you doing to build a relationship with them? My fault. Second question is, who are you discipling, and what are you doing to move them forward in the big question? Third question is, who are discipleship prospects, and what are you doing to build relation with them to help determine if they are actual going to be disciples or moving them forward on the track of becoming a disciple from a prospect. Fourth question is, who is mentoring you, and tell me what you're learning from your time in them. These mentors don't have to be people locally. It's ideal if they're in person, but it could be by phone, by Skype, by FaceTime, by Marco Polo. It could be somebody that's non-local. Obviously, the goal would be they're as close to proximity as possible. And it's not that every week you're meeting with them. It's just I want to see that they're thinking about learning and thinking about learning from somebody who's good at something they want to get good at. The fifth question is, who are mentor prospects and what are you doing to build a relationship with them? I want them always thinking about who's in their net as a mentor and who possibly might come into their net or their pool as a mentor. Does that make sense? And then I'm asking who they're discipling and who's possibly out there in the fishing pond that they can invite into a discipleship relationship. And the evangelism piece is, who are they praying for to come to Jesus, and what are they doing to build a relationship? Not that they're sharing Jesus with them every week, but I want them to have some kind of connection or rub with them so that they nurture the relationship even if all they talk about is the Seahawks or the Mariners or Real Madrid or whatever it is their interesting areas, that they share some camaraderie. Because if they're in a relationship, they got something in common. It's probably historical. It might not be local. They might not even be local. It might be you're praying for some person in another country you don't know. That's fine too. And you're not able to establish a relationship with. I just want names that they're praying for regularly, and if possible, they're moving the ball forward by staying engaged with them, so that if a window opens up where they're vulnerable or they have a need, that you're somebody they might tap into because you've shown you've cared by persevering with them. That's the 5 questions. The 6th one is accountability. Accountability has 2 forms. One is, are they in a relationship where they're accountable to each other? And this is within the discipleship context. So if I have 2 or more disciples, I want them to be engaged together. So what I do if I have 12 guys is I'll have 4 little groups of 3, and those 3 people will be accountable to text each other every day or 2. How are you doing in reading? How are you doing in the homework? How are you doing in prayer? They each are sharing the same homework. I'm getting them to interact. This is a recent development I've found. It's very powerful because it gets them to engage with people they may not normally engage with. And I actually align them in groups where they don't have traditional engagements because I want them to build relationships within the family. I want Peter and James and John to know each other. They did because they were fishermen. But I want them to know Thomas and Bartholomew, and I want them to know Judas, and I want them to know everybody that's in the family in a deeper way than they do. And so I put them together. That's not a Bible verse. That's just an experiential deal that they can be in relationship to ask. So they'll say, I got my reading done today, and I finished my prayer time. How are you guys doing? Or looking to pray later today. I've done my reading. Or something unrelated to the homework. Could you pray for me? I'm speaking. I got this presentation. Or whatever the case might be. It's a way to get them engaging. I'm added to each of the groups. So not only are they in groups of 3 with each other, I'm in every group so I can monitor as their overseer that they actually are engaging, and I'll make sure somebody's not dominating it, that the other guy or 2 are also checking in. It's been a tremendous way to get them accountable to each other daily, because if not, then they don't even start doing the homework maybe to the last day or the day before, and this way they're reminded by each other, so I, as the spiritual father here, don't have to be engaged aggressively. They keep stimulating their own pot. If I got 2 guys, I'm part of it, and they are communicating with each other. And I'll know, obviously, if there's just 2 or 3 of us or 4 of us, I'll know exactly what's going on, that they're accountable, and they're also encouraged by praying for and caring for each other. It has so many ancillary benefits that accountability has been super cool. And it teaches them to communicate, to be regular, and to be diligent with vision. We also, within that context, just like in prayer, you have tacos and long praying, which are both prayer but 2 different things. We have accountability relationship through text or email group, and we also have accountability questions. And we start them out with accountability questions that are generally linked to their homework or the Big Ten. So it might be, are you reading 2 chapters today or more? It might be, did you pray for a 10-minute block or more every day? It might be, did you memorize your verse? So we have accountability questions that are applicable to the Big Ten until we get to the point where the Big Ten becomes habitual. And after that, we add optional ones. Well, what you need accountability in and what I need accountability in are 2 different things. And so the accountability questions are applicable to that person's weak spots so that they aren't liabilities and they can become stronger, if that makes sense. So it might be somebody who struggles with tithing. It might be somebody who struggles with time management. It might be somebody who needs to have a night with their spouse. It might be somebody who needs to be reminded of spending time with their kids. I don't know what it'll be, but we give them an option of 10 or 20 or 30 questions that they can pick the few that they need to be accountable with another brother, brothers to brothers, sisters to sisters. Haven't addressed that yet. But discipleship happens within the context of sexes. Basically, men disciple men, women disciple women. Are there exceptions to that? Yes, but it's inherent to know the dangers and risks of cross-pollinating sex. It's never advocated. I have had times where there was not a man in a community who I know that would come along, somebody who was new in faith or new to the area. And I might stand in the gap, depending on who it is, and their age and all those kind of factors, we're trying to protect ourselves from the scheme of the devil who'd like things to become twisted even if you're working with other believers. So men disciple men, women disciple women. We generally have people disciple family members, somebody from the outside, because I found just generally things get funky. If I try to disciple my little brother, you have dynamics and family dynamics that changes the relationship that sometimes it doesn't end well. Again, if you don't have options, we'll do whatever it takes for anybody to help somebody grow. But if they're in a local church, God willing, there's men there and women there that come alongside. Obviously, you've got to have a discipleship community. Otherwise, they don't know what they're doing. But generally, as we grow cultures within cities or churches, we have enough men around that we can give somebody an option to come alongside a younger person in the Lord. Again, that's not chronology. You could be much more mature and be 15 and disciple somebody who's 23. Now, is that rare? Absolutely. Because it gets funky when you try to disciple your same age group, because it takes a lot of humility and deferment for that to work. Generally, a 17-year-old with a 16-year-old, the 16-year-old feels like, who am I? I know as much as you do. If a guy's got humility, he'll be willing to be taught and developed by somebody younger than them chronologically. But generally, people are uncomfortable discipling somebody of similar age, and people are uncomfortable being discipled by somebody of similar age, though it should not matter because chronology is not linked to maturity. But there are practical considerations in age groups. There's practical considerations with sexes, and that's a big one because that's one way that people will stumble very fast and very furiously. And so we generally say men with men, women with women. I have been in a situation where I've been a stand in the gap for a gal until she can be brought to another gal, and I service at a limited level while they stabilize. If they're new to an area, we do whatever it takes, but we're wise as a serpent and gentle as a dove about the schemes of the devil to destroy stuff. And family has risk, male and female has risk, and so we try to circumvent those risks that we've seen experientially are problematic. That's an example of the 5 questions, and I also address the issue of different cross-pollinating age and sex and things like that.